think I started a live video just a minute ago, and I got kicked off for some reason. Um, but anyways, if you missed any of that, happy Mother's Day to everybody. And I know that Mother's Day can be a difficult time for some people, and it can be a wonderful time for others. Some of us had moms that we love and appreciate. Some of us had really painful experiences, um, and I know that for me, Mother's Day is different because, of course, I have an amazing wife who is an amazing mom. But I lost my mom back in 2014, and so of course on a day like today, I miss her a lot. Um, but anyway, if you're here in Grants, as long as there are no strange orders from our government that extend, the stay-at-home order, we are planning to get together next weekend on Saturday and Sunday. We will just have worship services. We will not have classes. We will not have children's church. Won't have anything like that. There are a lot of we're going to require everybody at church to wear a mask. That's just going to be part of it. I know it's going to be kind of strange as we get together and everybody has masks on. We're going to discourage hugging and handshaking and things like that. We're going to sit every other pew. There's going to be hand sanitizer as you come in I just strongly encourage you to use. We're going to try to be as safe and as we can, but hopefully we'll be able to get together again here soon. Also just want to encourage everybody to be praying for Janie Rittenhouse. She is having some bad symptoms that they've been trying to treat with antibiotics, and it's not working, and she may have to be hospitalized if a second type of antibiotic doesn't work. So just be praying for Janie. Be praying for Mike Bush, Sally Stewart's cousin, who is still in the hospital, but hopefully remaining and having some continued improvement. There are just a lot of people be praying also for Bill Scott, who is struggling with some his cancer treatments as well. I just want to encourage everybody to be praying for everybody. This is a tough time for all of us. So we have been studying the Psalms. We have specifically been looking at the Psalms of disorientation. Remember, we have categorized these Psalms into three different types of Psalms. We have there are Psalms of orientation where things are going well. There are Psalms of disorientation where things are going poorly, and the psalmist is disoriented, and it doesn't feel like God is doing anything, and it's hard to see God. And then there are Psalms of new orientation where God has shown up. He has brought us up out of the pit. Things are going much better. And the Psalm of new orientation talks about how God has come through. So we're continuing to look at the Psalms of disorientation. And the Psalm that we're going to look at today is quite a bit different than the ones that we have been looking at. Remember that the Psalms of disorientation often follow a typical pattern. There is an address and a complaint to God. There is a petition for God to act or do something. The psalmist often includes motivation, and he gives God a reason to act. Then the psalmist will often end with a statement of trust that even in the midst of the difficult time, even in the midst of being in the pit, God, I trust you. And then there's also often a vow to praise. In other words, once you come through, God, I will praise you. Or maybe I will praise you regardless of whether you come through or not, but there's often a vow to praise. Well, the psalm that we're going to look at today is Psalm 50. If you want to go ahead and turn over to Psalm 50. Psalm 50 does not contain really any of these elements. In fact, Psalm 50 is not speech to God. Remember, we talked about in the early parts of this class that often the Psalms are inspired speech to God, but actually Psalm 50, the psalmist actually writes in the opposite direction. It's actually a really artistic depiction of God actually interacting with his people. And Psalm 50 is really interesting because it actually kind of shows us this this courtroom scene of God coming down and speaking to his people, indicting his people. And it actually sounds a bit like the prophets. If you've read some of the prophets, they also do courtroom scenes where God comes down and interacts with his people. And so that's what this psalm is. And at the end, we'll kind of talk about a little bit why I'm lumping this with the lament psalms. But let's go ahead and turn over to Psalm 50, and let's start reading Psalm 50, and we'll get into it. So Psalm 50, let's go ahead and read first 6 verses. I'm reading out of the New Living Translation. This is a translation I've picked up and started using the last couple years, and I really enjoy the way it puts some of the phrases, and it just it kind of brings new life. I try to switch translations every few years just to change it up for me. I like change, unfortunately. Some people don't like that, but I do. Anyways, let's start reading Psalm 50. Let's read verses 1 through 6. The Lord, the Mighty One, is God, and He has spoken. He has summoned all humanity from where the sun rises to where it sets. From Mount Zion, the perfection of beauty, God shines in glorious radiance. Our God approaches, and He is not silent. Fire devours everything in His way, and a great storm rages around Him. He calls on the heavens above and earth below to witness the judgment of His people. Notice the courtroom language, witness and judgment. Bring my faithful people to me, those who made covenant with me by giving sacrifices. Let the heavens proclaim His justice, for God Himself will be the judge. So it's interesting, whenever God shows up, creation is affected, right? So we immediately read of a devouring fire and a raging tempest, and God calls all of creation to court because He can, right? He has dominion. He created all of it, so therefore He has the power to invite all things to court, everything that He has created, and especially His beloved people. And it's the courtroom where God is acting as judge. All right, so let's keep reading verses 7 through 15. O my people, listen as I speak. Here are my charges against you, O Israel. I am God, your God. I have no complaint about your sacrifices or the burnt offerings you constantly offer. But I do not need the bulls from your barns or the goats from your pens. For all the animals of the forest are mine, and I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird on the mountains, and all the animals of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for all the world is mine and everything in it. Do I eat the meat of bulls? Do I drink the blood of goats? Make thankfulness your sacrifice to God, and keep the vows you made to the Most High. Then call on me when you are in trouble, and I will rescue you, and you will give me glory. So God brings His charges against them, and He doesn't seem to have a problem with the offerings, the sacrifices they have offered. They seem to be performing the acts of worship, but they don't seem to understand what those acts of worship mean. They believe that just simply bringing their sacrifices is enough. But God says, no, I don't need all that stuff. It already belongs to me. I don't eat I don't eat the flesh of goats, and I don't drink their blood. That's not what's important to me. I don't need all those things. Rather, what I need is for you to be thankful. I need for you to keep your vows. That is what I want. Again, this is, very reminiscent of what some of the prophets say in their writings and what some of the prophets spoke, or how the prophets spoke to the people. Okay, let's keep reading verses 16 through 23. We'll finish out the psalm. But God says to the wicked, why bother reciting my decrees and pretending to obey my covenant? For you refuse my discipline and treat my words like trash. When you see thieves, you approve of them, and you spend your time with adulterers. Your mouth is filled with wickedness, and your tongue is full of lies. You sit around and slander your brother, your own mother's son. And while you did all this, I remained silent, and you thought I didn't care. But now I will rebuke you, listing all my charges against you. Repent, all of you who forget me, or I will tear you apart, and no one will help you. But give thanks to a sacrifice that truly, but giving thanks is a sacrifice that truly honors me. If you keep to my path, I will reveal to you the salvation of God. So here God, he focuses on the conduct that does not match their worship. They are reciting decrees as a show. They are pretending to obey his covenant. They are treating his words like trash. They are approving of thieves, and they are spending time with adulterers. They're doing all these things. They're speaking wickedness and lies, slandering their brother. And in verse 21, God says, you thought that I didn't care while you did all of these things. In other words, they're treating God almost like the pagans treated their deities, right? Their little household gods that sat in their houses. They're treating God as if he is one of those, as if he just doesn't care what they do. But God is rebuking them. He is listing his charges against them. And then he invites all of those who have forgotten him to repent, or he will tear them apart. Very strong language is used. Or he will tear them apart, and no one is going to help them. And he says again, give thanks. That's the sacrifice that I desire. Give thanks. That's the sacrifice that I want. And then he says, keep my path, and you will experience my salvation. And so again, you may be wondering, what is this psalm doing with the laments? Why are you lumping them together? Well, again, this is a change of direction. So most lament psalms are the psalmist speaking to God. He is making his complaints known to God. He is petitioning God to act. He is motivating God to act. But this psalm is written in reverse. It's written from God to people who are in the pit. It's written from God to get people to begin to think and reflect on, why am I here? Is there something that I have done that has resulted in me being in this place? And so this psalmist invites you and I as readers today to ask the question, is there something that I have done that has resulted in me being in this desperate situation? Another psalm that does this is Psalm 81, and we could read that today as well, but we're not going to. You could read Psalm 81 on your own if you wanted to afterwards. But if you're anything like me, have been moments in life where the situation that I'm currently in is directly related to circumstances and somebody else's sin, and it has nothing to do with me. But then there have been other moments when the things that I have done have resulted in me being in the pit. And this psalm invites me to reflect on, what have I done to affect the situation that I'm in? Do I need to recommit to thankfulness? Do I need to recommit to the sacrifice that God truly wants, which is thankfulness to him? Do I need to recommit my path to God so I can experience his salvation? And that's really why I wanted to include this in the lament psalms, because it still is dealing with a difficult situation, but it's dealing with a difficult situation where I may be at fault, and I may need to refocus my life on God, to give Him the sacrifice that He truly wants, not the money in the plate, not my time. Instead, He wants my thankfulness. He wants my acknowledgement that any good thing that I have experienced is a result of His power and His activity in my life. Um, so that's what I have for you this morning. I would encourage all of us to, again, use this language or use this psalm to guide you if you're experiencing the pit. Maybe you do need to examine what is going on in your life. Maybe the difficulty that you're facing right now has to do with some choices that you have made in your life. So everybody have a wonderful Sunday, a wonderful Mother's Day. Give all of your moms a text or a Facebook message, or if you can, give them a hug. All those special moms in your life, and just tell them that you love them. Everybody have a wonderful day.